Hello everyone, I'm Forum BX257, your friendly neighborhood G.I. Joe toy reviewer. And on this spooky Halloween, I'm going to be telling you my top 10 list of the creepiest vintage G.I. Joe action figures. Now, for the most part, some of these are quite intentional, so you'll probably guess what most of them are on my list. But some of them are unintentional, so I hope they'll be a very spooky surprise to you. Ooh. Honorable mention goes to the 1986 Serpentor action figure. Love him or hate him, this character has the classic B-movie horror origin of Frankenstein's monster. A collection of DNA from different historical leaders mixed together into a single cloned body. Unlike the classic monster, this wasn't an experiment by the scientists to just see if he could bring a cadaver to life, but rather to give the Cobra organization a new leader. The look of the Cobra Emperor is often described as garish and out of place with the rest of the Cobra outfit designs at the time. However, it always looked to me like a modern interpretation of ancient South American kings' outfits, like the Mayans' animal head garbs and capes. Serpentor's sole action figure accessory was a dagger, perfect for those Mayan sacrifices. In no particular order is number 10. The Nemesis Enforcer from the 1987 Cobra Law Team 3-pack. While all three figures are creepy, the winged being is particularly so. Like Serpentor, he is an amalgamation of several very different biological components, but this time chosen for their maximum yuck factor, not leadership abilities. His file card reads like H.P. Lovecraft wrote it. He is the other presence in the pitch black room. He is the lurker in the dark just outside your bedroom window. He rattles the garbage cans and makes your floors creak. He is the dread that stands behind you in the dark and dares you to turn and face him. Apparently this ancient character also inspired legends of vampires and harpies. The pupilless, upturned eyes on the action figure is kind of disturbing too. At the number 9 spot is the 1992 Toxo Zombie from the second series of Eco Warrior subline. Hasbro did a great job in taking the 1991 Toxo Viper design and giving it a toxic waste damaged look. While the whole subline is clearly influenced by the bizarre radioactive effects of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the ecological pollution of Toxic Crusaders, Toxo Zombies in particular are frightening, not just to look at, but read the file card and you find out their mutations are no accident. While the main body of the text describes the effects of prolonged exposure to toxic chemicals, there is another layer of horror. Check out the figure accessories and equipment list. It shows most of the protective equipment with question marks, as if the writers themselves were not sure if any of these safety measures did any good. At number 8, is probably the figure even people with casual knowledge of the G.I. Joe universe know, Dr. Mindbender. Just look at this 1986 figure. He is the very definition of evil scientist with his twirly mustache, monocle, and black Cobra emblazoned cape. A once good man who experimented on himself, he became a brain-scrambling villain. Kinda tragic, really. So why does the mad scientist figure come with an electric prod for a weapon? Originally, he was going to be Cobra's prisoner Interrogator, but Hasbro thought that a toy that tortures the good guys was going a bit far. Yikes. No wonder they changed him to another occupation that Cobra sorely needed a representative for. Thanks to the revamp of this character, we get his co-creations, Serpentor, and later the Mega Marine Monsters. Number 7 on my list are the 3 Manimals, alien beings released in 2001, Warwolf, Slythor, and Iguanus. While I tried to keep my list to vintage G.I. Joe, which officially ranged from 1982 to 1994, these guys are on the list because they were supposed to be part of the late 1994 Star Brigade release, with 3 more coming in 1995. But 3 3/4 inch scale G.I. Joes were cancelled in 1994. Finally being released by becoming a KB store exclusive in 2001, the first 3 of 6 were released and then promptly cancelled again. So what makes these figures so creepy? Well, they all transform into monsters, as if their standard alien appearances weren't shocking enough. Even the method of transformation was a bit weird, by retracting their alien heads and letting the monster heads burst out from their chests. Not all Manimals were going to have this type of transformation, but the 3 that got officially released coincidentally did. All 6 Manimals were bad guys, and you can view photos of the original 1994 color schemes, as well as prototypes of the 1995 releases and original Star Brigade packaging online. Hasbro was clearly just starting full production before the word came down to stop all 3 3/4 inch scale operations, just as well as apparently the general public didn't care for them, even though adult collectors go crazy for them today. In the number 6 spot are more monsters, but of a more terrestrial origin. The 1993 Mega Marine Monsters, Monstro Vipers, and Bio Vipers. Looking like they came from a different toy line altogether, these Cobra experiments have a virtual checklist of creepy goodness. The Monstro Vipers were once elite 1990 range vipers and had their DNA crossed with werewolves and Bigfoot creatures. No, seriously, that's what the file card casually mentions, even though these cryptids are mentioned nowhere else in the G.I. Joe universe. The action figure had a really weird gimmick where it could toss a ball of Play-Doh stored in its stomach of all places. Likewise, the Bio Vipers were once 1992 Cobra Eel Elite Divers, but were volunteer forced into becoming mutant abominations. The Bio Vipers weren't even human enough to be commanded anymore, and remote computer controls had to be inserted into their brains. The Bio Vipers had tentacles, because of course they did, which could contract at the raise or lower of a lever on its back. Both the hairy Monstro Vipers and the aquatic Bio Vipers had a monster smell feature, adding to the disturbing quality of these action figures. Number 5 is Cesspool, Cobra Chief Environmental Operative from the 1992 Eco Warrior subline. Like Dr. Mindbender, he was turned into Cesspool by accident, but as he was already an evil businessman, we aren't supposed to feel all that sorry for his mental and physical damage. Admittedly, the sculpt of the damaged action figure face is really unsettling. This is a character who is in it for revenge against the nagging environmentalist who he feels wrongs him, rather than outright criminal Cobra ideology, even though it was his own facilities and chemicals that ultimately disfigured him. Looking back on his origin, it feels like something written for a knockoff Batman villain, or, as I mentioned in the Toxo Zombie part, just doubling down on that anti-pollution environmental trend that was rampant in toy aisles at the time. Making an early 90s toy character? Dunk him in chemicals. Done. Number 4 is a trio of alien figures from the 1994 Star Brigade line, Carcass, Predacon, and Lobotomax. Unlike the Manimals higher on the list, these aliens didn't transform but were still really ugly looking beings. Predacon, with his multiple arms, is pretty standard fare when it comes to odd alien designs, but Carcass is a different story. With segmented wire bendable arms and an exposed ribcage, this character isn't wearing anything. If it weren't for his included accessories and file card, you would never know he wasn't some unintelligent space creature that attacks friend and foe alike. In fact, the Mexican variant of this figure comes in black plastic, giving him a distinct Ridley Scott alien vibe. The equally strange looking multi-legged Lobotomax has a really strange origin. Apparently, Predacon sliced some of this guy's head with part of the brain away during a fight, which I guess is where he gets his lobotomy-inspired name. Pretty disturbing. At number 3 is the 1987 Crystal Ball. Of course he has to be on a list like this. His file card is written by none other than Stephen King, and it shows with that random mention of the city of Bangor in the US state of Maine, a favorite location of that horror thriller novelist. Since Dr. Mindbender got his Interrogator origin overwritten by Hasbro, this guy filled the Cobra need. This figure really didn't gel with the toy buying public, and the carded figures could still be found tucked away on toy shelves a whole decade later. Admittedly, he does come off as more goofy than genuinely creepy, and a shield accessory with a large lenticular sticker with an image of hypnotic pulsating rings as his only accessory didn't help. In his favor, however, he was sculpted to look like famous vintage horror film actor Vincent Price, so there's that. My number 2 pick is the only good guy on this list, the 1993 Robo Joe from the Star Brigade subline. The Joe in his codename stands for Jet Tech Operations Expert. Apparently he's the inventor of the bulky Armor Tech trademark suits worn by a few of the Star Brigade characters in the first series and later thankfully dropped. His tragic backstory tells of being fatally wounded by Destro and rebuilt into a cyborg by the Joes, RoboCop style. But fatal usually means, dead, so that means Joe scientists brought this guy back to life somehow? Even creepier is how the action figure was sculpted. Take a look at his head, it isn't symmetrical. The half that is mechanical is way smaller than the human half, meaning it's absolutely not a metal shell over half his skull and face. Destro really blew this poor Joe's head apart. That's kind of horrific. And finally, the last creepy action figure I chose for this list is the 1991 Battlecopter pilot Interrogator. Those Hasbro designers really wanted a Cobra Inquisitor, and this guy finally pulls off a more serious approach to it. He uses a combination of proven psychological technique and technology built into his Darth Vader-esque helmet. He's purposely written as a mystery on his file card, but there's something even more mysterious about this action figure than that. He's a pack-in pilot figure for a Battlecopter with no reason for such an elaborate and unconnected backstory. Honestly, the line about his piloting skills seems like an afterthought. Was the file card a reuse from the 2 previous attempts at this type of Cobra? Or was this guy originally meant for individual carded sale? Whatever the case may be, he doesn't have the cartoony villainous look that Dr. Mindbender and Crystal Ball present. Instead, the Interrogator figure design is subtle and thus, in my opinion, far more effectively creepy once you figure out what he's all about.